with your blessing, we're go ahead and get going. Everybody's time. Thank you all so much for joining us. I'm sorry that my camera is off, but I wouldn't add anything to it by putting my face on screen. I'm going to turn this over quite quickly, but I did want to express my special thanks to not only our guest tonight, Jenn Budd, but Cheryl Cage for helping coordinate this. And there is a serendipity to the event itself that I'm going to let Cheryl tell you that story of. But thank you all for joining us this evening. I'm really looking forward to this. So without further ado, I'm going to let Cheryl take it over and then introduce Jenn from there. Cheryl, the floor.
Thanks, Eric, so much. I really appreciate it. I'm going to be really brief with this, but I was invited by a friend to go hear Ms. Budd speak a couple months ago at the historic Y downtown Tucson. And at the last minute, my friend couldn't go. So I thought, oh, well, I'll just go alone. And I'm so glad that I did because I found Jenn's talk just riveting and so timely. And I knew that I wanted to get more people to be able to hear her story. And so I'm so thankful for the Pima County Dems for hosting this and helping me to advertise it. As everyone else, I've been thinking a lot about community lately and how important it is to have each other during these difficult times. But I've also been thinking about how contagious we are to each other. Fear is contagious, but bravery is also contagious. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to get Jenn in front of more people. I think it's really important to surround ourselves with people who are speaking up, who are not fearful, because it gives us more hope and more bravery. So let me just explain a little bit about who Jenn is, and then I'm just going to turn it over to her. Jenn was a senior patrol agent with U.S. Border Patrol in San Diego and an intelligence agent at the San Diego sector headquarters from 1995 to 2001, when she resigned in protest due to the rampant corruption and brutality she witnessed on a daily basis. Jenn has written a wonderful book called Against the Wall. I highly recommend it. She's not only a brave person, but she's a darn good writer, and I'm really enjoying reading her book. The other thing is I want to let you know about an HBO documentary that Jenn is a huge part of it. It's called Critical Incident: Death at the Border. And I found that riveting also. I'm so pleased that she was able to do this for us tonight. I think you're going to find her fascinating. And we will, at the end of her talk, do a Q&A for about 20 minutes. So start thinking of your questions. And so I would like to introduce Jenn Budd, and take it away, Jenn.
Oh my goodness. Thank you very much for that introduction, Cheryl. That is very kind of you. Today, I wrote out my words. I wanted to make sure that I got everything in on time here. So forgive me for looking to the side and reading a bit while I talk to you today. I'm very thankful. You all are the first Democratic group to ask me to speak. So I appreciate that. I know that's kind of surprising, but I think it's probably because I give Democrats as much crap about immigration as I do Republicans. So I want to thank you, Cheryl, though, for inviting me to this, and Alex Cack also for extending that invitation to me. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my dogs who are acting crazy. So let me tell you a little bit about myself, just so you know where I'm coming from. I graduated from Auburn University in December of 1993 with a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Law, with an emphasis in policing organizations and structures. I graduated with honors with the intentions of going to law school. And believe it or not, I wanted to be a civil rights attorney. Although I was raised in Northern Alabama, I did not come from a conservative family. My parents were lifelong liberals and Democrats. So that's how I was raised. After graduation, as I applied to law schools from my parents' home, I suddenly became aware of how traumatic and violent my home life had been. Since I was about 6 years old, my mother became a severe alcoholic, and she brutally beat me with leather belts and horrible words. And it wasn't basically until I had gone away to college and then I came back home and I was like, this isn't normal. And so I knew I needed to get out of there. If you know anything about alcoholic families, all of us have somebody in our family probably or experience it personally ourselves, then you know about this kind of phenomenon. And that's kind of the same time I heard about this thing called the Border Patrol. I had never heard of it. We weren't talking about immigration in the mid 1990s. And you got to remember that the internet, if anybody who's on here is young, you got to remember the internet wasn't around back then. And so basically anything I knew of the Border Patrol at the time came from the agents that recruited me and then instructed me in the academy. So I entered the U.S. Border Patrol Academy in June of 1995. And that's at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glenn County, Georgia. They call it Glencoe for short. And in the academy, we were repeatedly told that there were many legal ways for migrants to apply for asylum or to get workers' permits. It wasn't until many years later that I finally learned that the government actually had been slowly closing all of these legal avenues for the majority of the immigrants. And that they had begun deporting more and more immigrants for minor nonviolent crimes. And that in turn caused more family separations, which caused more illegal crossings when you do things like that. So much like today in the academy back in the 90s, we were only told about that the migrants were all criminals, rapists, and drug dealers trying to cross into the country illegally. By 1997, after 2 years of deterrence policies, which are the walls and the militarization of the border, and pushing them out to the most desolate places, intentionally knowing that it would cause them harm. After about 2 years of that, it became pretty common to find several dead people out of one group instead of one person here and there every once in a while. And so we started seeing more bodies. And sometimes that included entire families that sometimes would perish together. For me personally, it was the start of understanding how policies handed down from Washington, D.C. were intentionally and knowingly killing migrants. There has been a quiet and slow genocide going on out here on the southern border for over 3 decades. It meets all the elements of a genocide except for one. That is aimed at a specific race, religion, or ethnicity. Our management's public response, the Border Patrol management's public response from our chiefs and so forth, was to blame the migrants. Privately, we were ordered not to go too far north where we knew most of the bodies would be found. Today, the U.S. Border Patrol claims about 10,000 dead bodies from deterrence policies. That number, according to experts, and I agree with these experts, is actually about 80,000. I ended up leaving after 6 years and rising to the highest non-management rank of senior patrol agent. I had been a field training officer, a sector prosecutions agent, a station intelligence agent, served on a narcotics joint task force team, and was an acting supervisory border patrol agent and a senior sector intelligence agent before resigning in protest. While at sector intelligence, I uncovered the fact that the head of Campo Station was involved in the smuggling of illegal drugs. When he discovered I was investigating him, sector bosses offered me a promotion to keep my mouth shut. Because I said no to their corruption, I was forced to double back on shifts and do a midnight shift. at a stationary position that was meant for a junior ranking agent. When the automatic weapon fire landed right outside of my truck, outside the driver's side window of my truck, I escaped north, only to be met by the boss I was investigating. He asked if I had learned my lesson, and then he said that next time they'd be sure they didn't miss. And that is why I resigned in protest. And although the Border Patrol has changed a great deal since I was an agent, the culture of the agency has not. The Border Patrol I see in Minneapolis attacking Alex Preddy with pepper spray, disarming him, and then filling his body with multiple bullets, lying about the events on national television and getting rid of evidence. That is the Border Patrol I remember. There is no other more corrupt agency than the United States Border Patrol. What we are seeing is what I call the border patrolification of all the federal law enforcement agencies. That is, we are seeing agents unafraid to lie to the public, the press, and in the courts while under oath because they know there will be no accountability. The Border Patrol itself has never had an agent held accountable for killing any person while on duty in over 101 years of existence. This corruption starts in the beginning of an agent's career. Once one becomes a full agent and passes their post-academy training, if they're a male agent, they are often given a graduation party by the management of their station. And that involves a late night trip to the Mexican brothels and all the alcohol, drugs, and women they can handle. After your probationary period, you are given the lessons on how to violate people's rights and get away with it. When a migrant tells an agent they need asylum, agents often just simply ignore them. Agents are not required to tell migrants what their rights are. Sometimes this means agents tell the migrants that they can get asylum if they just sign these documents, which happen to only be in English. But the truth is, a lot of times they're removal orders, but the migrant does not know. If migrants complain about physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, agents can simply throw them back across the wall. Border Patrol stations and processing centers are never inspected, never questioned. Agents are free to behave any way they choose because there is rarely ever any repercussions. It is in the field where agents learn all these policies that they don't teach in the academies. My field training agents taught me how to intentionally make migrant smuggling loads crash and not get caught, even if we killed somebody. It is after the academy that the agents learn to give migrants what is called a Mexican heart attack by pushing on their jugular neck vein while they are handcuffed. Everything okay? Okay. Let me start again on it. It is after the academy that agents learn to give migrants what is called a Mexican heart attack by pushing on their jugular neck vein while they are handcuffed to make them pass out. It is in the middle of the night in the desert where we are taught always to have a drop knife or gun, to claim a rock was thrown at us if we ever have to shoot, and to repeat that we fear for our lives over and over again. It is on the border we learn to trust our cover-up teams and our corrupt union. I see my training continues today in the agents I see in Chicago and Minneapolis. The ramming of cars and then the lying and claiming that they hit us. That is what I was taught over 30 years ago in the mountains of Campo, California. That is what they did to Mary Mar Martinez in Chicago before they shot her. The dangerous pursuits to question a person's citizenship that end up killing innocent bystanders. We saw this most recently with a pursuit that led to crash killing an innocent American educator in Savannah, Georgia, Dr. Linda Davis. How to justify your shooting or other use of force by saying that they threw a rock? We just saw this training demonstrated before Judge Ellis's Chicago court when Chief Gregory Bovino tried to justify throwing tear gas into a crowd by lying and claiming he was hit in the head with a rock. He did this under oath in court testimony. But video clearly showed that Bovino was lying to the court and had not been hit by a rock at all. And the case was dismissed. But Bovino was not held accountable. This is what these agents see over and over again. They just get let go and the case just gets dismissed. So they know they won't be held accountable. For your information, FYI, having a rock thrown at an agent is the #1 reason given in Border Patrol shootings. Today, Border Patrol use of force violations can be investigated by CBP's Office of Professional Responsibility or DHS's Office of Inspector General. Unfortunately, these systems of oversight are rigged because the investigators of both agencies are mostly ex-Border Patrol and ex-CBP officers. The head of CBP OPR investigations until last year was Daniel Altman, who just happens to be an ex-Border Patrol agent. In 2023 and 2024, it was Altman's office who warned two of our highest ranking Border Patrol chiefs that they were both under investigation for using their rank to demand sex from junior female agents. Both of these chiefs were allowed to resign so that they could keep their pensions, and the investigations were immediately closed. Warning agents of potential investigations and charges is illegal under federal law, but again, nobody was held accountable. A great example of this system and how it is rigged can also be seen in the investigation of Alex Preddy's killing. But first, I need to give you some history on the cover-up teams. Border Patrol used to maintain teams known as CITs, or Critical Incident Teams. CITs started secretly in San Diego sector in 1987 in response to Border Patrol agents being investigated for over 24 shootings in 1 year in one sector alone. Originally hidden within Border Patrol's sector intelligence units, the CITs spread to other Border Patrol sectors throughout the 1990s. Publicly, they would often claim to not be investigating use of force incidents, but simply assisting outside agencies in investigating Border Patrol. But privately, the agencies set up their own forensics classes at their academies, and these classes were designed and created by other Border Patrol agents who had no credentials, no professional experience in forensics, and no legal authority to do so. Border Patrol agents were trained to call in the CITs first in any incident before notifying official investigators. The teams then set about fixing the scenes by getting rid of witnesses and other evidence. Then the real investigators would be called in, or oftentimes the real investigators simply used the CIT reports and corrupted analysis for their own investigations. This is how agents have gotten away with their crimes for decades. These teams were so secret that Congress did not even know they existed until I came forward a few years ago to expose them. I know agents with over 20 years in who were in more administrative positions most of their careers, like academy instructor or training instructors, and they've never heard of the CIT. So that means that these teams are so secret, they're even secret within the organization itself. For over a year, I researched the teams, proving that they were illegal and that they had no authority from Congress to exist. I have documented case after case showing that these CIT units were the largest federal government cover-up team ever known to exist. And although over 10 congressional committees have demanded investigations into these teams, not a single one has occurred. Under the Biden administration, former Commissioner Chris Magnus, the CBP, ordered the teams disbanded. But unfortunately, the CIT agents were allowed to resign the Border Patrol and were then rehired under CBP's Office of Professional Responsibility to continue acting as evidence collection teams of their former colleagues. Essentially, the Biden administration simply legalized the biggest cover-up team in history. They essentially covered up the cover-up teams. Most recently, while being questioned by Senator Rand Paul, going back to the Preddy case and why this is important, former Border Patrol chief and current CBP commissioner Rodney Scott testified that these teams were responsible for identifying, collecting, and preserving the evidence from the Alex Preddy shooting. Scott was known in the Border Patrol for using these teams on numerous occasions. You can see how Commissioner Scott used the illegal teams to cover up killings when he was a chief in the Border Patrol in the HBO documentary Critical Incident. Cheryl was talking about at the beginning of this event. It is also available, I think, on Amazon Prime. So now that Scott is in charge of CBP, and now that the illegal teams have been legalized and moved into CBP, he's now in charge of these teams and covering up crimes again. And he just admitted in Congress that he's using them on the Preddy case. So, how did we as a country get to where the immigration enforcement agencies and their corruption has taken over nearly every aspect of our lives in this country? How did we get to the point that immigration agents are gunning down American citizens in broad daylight with cameras recording everything, and still there is little to no accountability? It is most important to understand that this is a both sides issue. If we get out of this moment in our history, in this era, if we get out of this and we return to the immigration systems we had under Clinton, Obama, or even Biden, then we will have failed. Deterrence policies were designed and written by Republicans and the Heritage Foundation, but it was former Democratic President Bill Clinton who enacted them. It's also important to remember that it was Obama who first held kids in cages and even engaged in the taking of newborns from migrant mothers in U.S. hospitals and turning them over to Child Protective Services. The difference between Republicans and Democrats in immigration is simply that Republicans will brag about their brutality, and the Democrats have failed to keep most of their promises. And then oftentimes they just pass a lot of the brutal Republican policies. Both parties have separated families, both have held children in cages, and both have sent tens of thousands to their deaths intentionally. But things really got started and got crazy under the first Trump administration. When Trump implemented the Migration Protection Protocols, also known as MPP or Remain in Mexico, in January 2019, we had just experienced some of the lowest illegal crossings. So the last part of the Obama administration, we had great numbers as far as the numbers of illegal crossings. And in fact, the Border Patrol was not overwhelmed at all. The average during the last 4 to 5 years of the Obama administration, the average Border Patrol agent was apprehending 1 to 2 migrants per month. That is not being overwhelmed at all, not in the least bit. And yet all they did was complain the whole time. And so when Trump created MPP, this required migrants to apply at the ports, but then forced them to wait in Mexico and not in the United States. This in turn created a backup on the southern border of people who needed to be processed by CBP. And in March of 2020, we know that's his last year of his first term, he enacted the public health law called Title 42 in response to COVID. This completely closed the asylum system. These two policies, MPP and Title 42, Trump's policies, put people who were running from drug dealers and cartel in further danger. And in fact, we saw record numbers of kidnappings, rape, and murder of those migrants while waiting for the hearings in Mexico. This is what forced so many to cross illegally then during the Biden administration. It only took a few months after Trump enacted those policies for the numbers to start increasing. And it also meant that whoever won the presidency in 2020, that if they then reopened the asylum system, that meant that they would then have to deal with all those people who had not been processed. And it would look like a ton of people were coming to the border, which is what it did look like. Unfortunately, when Biden won, he continued those policies, especially Title 42, for the first 3 years of his term. And this is when we got the so-called invasion that overwhelmed the Border Patrol. And then Trump continued to have influence on keeping it closed because he used the Border Patrol union on conservative news outlets to constantly argue that the system must stay closed or then the border would really be overrun, which wasn't true at all. And we ended up seeing that once they finally stopped the policy. The number of illegal crossings, once they gave legal avenues for people to come in and apply, the number of crossings dropped by 50%. The question would be, why would the Border Patrol Union, why would those agents intentionally lie to the American public and support a policy that intentionally shuttered the asylum system, causing thousands to cross illegally? Well, that's because they were working behind the scenes for Donald Trump to help get him reelected. Every Border Patrol agent knows that if you want to increase illegal crossings and overwhelm the Border Patrol, just restrict who can apply legally or shut down the entire system. That will cause people to cross illegally every single time. The last 30 years of immigration policies has taught us this. Additionally, Republicans in the union were constantly signaling to migrants considering traveling to the U.S. for asylum that the border was open and they would be welcomed by the Biden administration. That is, they intentionally encouraged migrants to cross illegally. Border Patrol leaders have now successfully taken over CBP and ICE management. This is because no other agency is trusted by President Trump as much as the U.S. Border Patrol. The patrol and its management are willing to obey any illegal order given by Trump, and agents are willing to throw tear gas, pepper spray at Americans exercising their First Amendment rights to protest and film their actions. Agents have thrown gas into cars with babies and children. They have rammed people with their cars and then lied to the public in courts claiming they were the victims, and then have given false testimony under oath that they were assaulted or impeded. It was these same immigration enforcement agencies who failed and allowed the terrorists of 9/11 into the country. No one was ever held accountable for this failure. Instead, Congress reorganized the agencies and gave their management billions of dollars. That is, they took the failed and corrupt agencies, gave them more money and more power for their failures. And since 9/11, ICE, CBP, and Border Patrol have focused heavily on recruiting people with Christian nationalist leanings, connections with Turning Point USA, far-right churches, and other organizations have created agencies with one goal in mind: purging this country of immigrants that do not align with their ideology. Agents are taught that they are serving a Christian God, and they must close their eyes, their ears, and ignore the violence they dish out to create a holy America. Just as Isaiah was sinful in Isaiah 6:8, agents are told that they may be sinful, but that they are God's warriors. This is how they view Trump and why they identify so closely with him. Chief Bovino even recently used taxpayer dollars to create a short propaganda film where an agent in uniform is reading Isaiah 6:8, and then they are shown passing tear gas canisters to each other, saying that they are doing God's work. This is a Border Patrol produced, short film. Over the last 3 decades, while the immigration enforcement agencies have been filling media with patriotic propaganda of how they are the most honorable soldiers, all have been engaging in illegal cover-ups of brutal use of force violations. They have hired known rapists, child molesters, and cartel members. They have knowingly hired people with domestic violence arrests, DUI convictions, and those who were under criminal investigations as they applied for employment. All crimes which these agents proudly separate families and deport people for. It must be said that the border was under control after the Obama administrations. Trump's policies intentionally created an out-of-control border, which was needed not only for his second electoral win, but to usher in the mass deportation. The mass deportation is needed to usher in the police state, which Trump intends to use to disrupt the elections that are coming up. I expect ICE, CBP, and Border Patrol to question voters who are of color of their citizenship and pull them out of line so that they cannot vote. That's what I expect to see. What you are seeing in the streets of America today is what has been going on quietly on our southern border for generations. The grabbing of Black and brown bodies simply based on the color of their skin, the family separations, the ramming of cars, the sexual assaults of those in custody, the rotten food, the crammed cells, the beatings, tear gas, killings, the dangerous pursuits that kill bystanders, the cover-ups. This is immigration policing. This is what I remember of the Border Patrol in the 90s. Most Americans simply did not care until it came to their own town. And while all of this is understandably depressing, and you may feel a bit hopeless after hearing my story, I have found hope. I have more hope than I have had in a long time, in many years. Before the mass deportation, those not living on the southern border didn't know anything about what was going on. We were just simply ignored down here, and the dangerous pursuits were seen as necessary for national security. The shootings were justified because of the alleged rock throwing and illegality of the people crossing that they would constantly spread. And the rape culture was always seen as just a few rotten apples. But for the first time in 30 years, I am seeing a light shined on these corrupt immigration enforcement agencies and their management. It is in this light that I have hope that we can demand and create a more humane immigration system that provides us with national security and humanity at the same time. All right, that's it.
Cheryl, back to you, friend.
Jenn, that was kind of overwhelming, and it's interesting to me. I learned so much at your first talk, which was, I think, in December, maybe, or January. And you have so much more information. You're really keeping on top of everything. So I would encourage people to go to your Substack, which is great, and also your website. So let's look at some questions that people might have. Alex, do you have questions for us?
Yeah, we've got a question in the chat from William Boyd. He wants to know, Jenn, why you think Democratic politicians have been complicit in some of these inhumane policies.
Because they don't know much about the southern border, and what they do know about it, they get only from the Border Patrol, and they only listen to the Border Patrol. This morning I was talking to one of the producers of the film, and he had told me that he talked to Senator Padilla, who's California Senator Alex Padilla. He's in the film just ever so slightly, and he says, it's kind of a weak response. He says, if this is true, this is really bad. We got to do something about this. And yet no Democratic congressman, senator has said anything about this film, and they won't talk about it. And I asked the producer, I said, do you think that they're concerned that if they investigate these critical incident teams, then it's going to bring back, well, they existed under Obama, they existed under Clinton, are people going to be like, is that what the Democrats are worried about? And he said, no, it's actually, his staff said to him recently that he's not going to talk about the film because he considers the film to be anti-law enforcement. And he wants to be pro-law enforcement. And the only thing he's going to talk about is the children and people in custody that are suffering, because he feels like to talk about the critical incident teams and the corruption of the Border Patrol is to attack them and be anti-law enforcement. And I'm just like, oh yeah. I just don't know where to go with that, So unfortunately, I think with Democrats, they don't have much knowledge of the border. Some of them do, but they realize that these agencies just have so much power over the majority of the politicians up there because of the amount of money that is involved in all of this, and the selling of basically all the contracts to defense contractors to build surveillance systems and everything that they're doing out here. So it's just another, like a war on drugs, a war on terror. Now it's just a war on immigrants. They're making money off of it.
Somebody in the questions asked your opinion about the firing of Kristi Noem and how you feel that's going to move forward.
It's not going to make any difference. In my mind, they promoted her. I know everybody's like, oh, they fired her, this and that. And it gave Democrats something to yell about. But in the end, it's not really going to change anything. It's like it's demanding that they pull their mask off is not a good response, and it's not going to change any of the killings and stuff that's going on. They just delivered a whole fleet of new trucks to Minneapolis for ICE agents. They're coming back. They're not leaving. So.
All right, we've got some other questions in the queue here. Shauna Leonard wants to know, what actions would you encourage people to take to most effectively make change?
I think to most effectively make change, one of the things we have to do is we have to get our local and state officials to stop investing in ICE and immigration policing and enforcement. They need to stop. I'm not saying that they shouldn't cooperate with them, and as far as do they need to turn people over to them or things like that, that's fine. But all of the money, the warehouses they're building, they don't need to be selling they don't need to be holding all these people in custody for indefinite periods of time when they haven't even seen a judge. They're violating the Constitution right now. And I think one of the other things that we need to demand is that the Border Patrol, number one, get back down to the border. That's one thing. I think you need to be organizing locally, and you need to be talking locally with the immigrants there to figure out what it is they need. But you also need to have a presence with your city councils and your county boards and all that other stuff, and let them know exactly where you stand on things, that you're not going to tolerate them doing this. Because if they can suspend due process for migrants, if they could suspend habeas corpus for migrants, which is what they're doing, then they can do that for citizens as well. It's just the very next step. So we have to demand that the migrants get due process. We have to demand that there be accountability through our states. They can file charges against these agents, use of force charges, even if the federal government says we see nothing here. There's nothing that says that they can't, and they have in the past. It's not true that that is a gray area law. They can do that. So you have to demand that your local and state politicians start standing up for this, and that they separate their local and state police. No more training with these agencies, no more accepting money from these agencies, no more accepting resources from these agencies. We have a huge problem with this joint task force thing. So what the Border Patrol, CBP, and ICE have been doing in the last 20 years is through these joint task force agencies is teaching our local sheriffs and our state police officers the indoctrination and the anti-immigrant hate and all this other stuff. That's what they've been teaching and indoctrinating them into all these things that I went through when I joined the agency. So we need to separate them and not have them working together, because they keep saying it's about terrorism, but let's be honest, they're not catching any terrorists. So.
All right, next question we have here is from Greg Falk. He wants to know, what do you think is the reason for the corruption and brutality you've described?
The United States Border Patrol was created in 1924. That was not too long after the Civil War. Our politicians started going after immigrants. They lost slave labor, so they started going after immigrants. And basically that is the culture of the United States Border Patrol. There's not single immigration law out there that these agencies, are working off of, that's not based in a lot of this racism and ethnocentrism. And so when the culture and everything comes from these same people, the sons and grandsons of the Confederacy that then went to Texas, became Texas Rangers, then join and create the Border Patrol and what we all see today. This is that same attitude, that same culture. And I know a lot of people get confused because especially the Border Patrol is like over half Latino, and they say, well, they can't be racist if they're Latino. And we teach them different words to use, so they don't see themselves, the words we call undocumented people in the Border Patrol are racist words, and they it's to help the Latinos not see themselves in the people that they're arresting. The white agents in the older days used to say the most common Latino slur words, but then during the 90s, 80s, and 90s, they started moving us towards other words. So, yeah.
All right, we have a raised hand from Chair Eric Robbins.
Jenn, thank you so much again. Blow your hair back narrative. Your personal testimony is powerful. I'm grateful to have been able to provide this forum for you. And just as a note for follow-up, and we will follow up with you, not only this recording, but maybe we can coordinate a podcast with you that we can give you snippets of that you can do with as you will.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly our circle of contacts among, electeds at both at the local, and congressional level, happy to try to connect you. I believe, as I think just about everybody here is going to, more people need to hear this story if you're willing to tell it, and everything that we can do to help get you into those spaces, we are here to do. Appreciate all you've done, Greta. Thank you so much for all you're doing. Stay close to us. Where are you located, by the way?
I'm just in San Diego. I'm in Tucson
Okay.
all the time almost.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you again for being here, and please make a note that we are going to follow up with introductions and further platform elevation.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, next question.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
Alex, can I say one thing?
go for it.
Somebody's asking, saying that you should be on MSNBC and all these places. And I remember you talking about how you used to go on those shows. Can you talk a little bit about how people are reacting?
Yeah, in the first Trump administration, I was on those shows quite a bit. And it was before my book came out. My book's been out this summer, it'll be 4 years. So it was during the first Trump administration. I got kicked off of MSNBC because I said at one point, they were showing Proud Boys and Patriot Front with signs that said illegal immigrants out, mass deportation. And I said, I think we need to be concerned that when ISIS rhetoric matches the Proud Boys and the Patriot Front, and that was like too much for them. And so then that was the end of that. And then they didn't want me to say anything bad about Biden because, I will critique both sides equally. And that's not to say that I won't vote for a Democrat. That's, of course, I'm going to vote for a Democrat. Don't be crazy. But essentially, when I was in Tucson last, when you saw me, they had contacted me because that was right when the Alex Preddy shooting was going on. And I was the one that I sent them that one video. I had it before they had it. And I said, look, it shows they disarm him and then they kill him. And they had to research it. It took them a couple hours because they have to verify the videos and stuff. It's understandable in AI with AI today. And then they were one of the first ones out with it. And they were like, oh, we need you to be here. And, I was doing a lot of talks and I'm like, I'll try and be available for you, but I can't. And then I was supposed to be on and they just let me sit there. And finally I text the anchor. I'm like, are you going to have me on or what? And they're like, oh, we changed your mind. And I'm like, so it's just if they, they back and forth. And it's so if it's not in the limelight right then and there, then they just move on. They've moved on from the Preddy because what you see is, and this happens all the time down here. We see it all the time. Border Patrol gets in trouble with shootings and then they get quiet and they back up a little bit. And they wait for everybody to get quiet and then they'll, go out and do it again. So like when I look at, they kept saying like, we can't help all the use of force we're doing. It's because they're doing it. But you see, when they get in trouble with these two shootings, suddenly they're still arresting. They're just not doing it with as much flavor and violence as they were before. So they are still in Minneapolis arresting. They're still in LA every day arresting, in Chicago every day, but they don't do it with as much fanfare. So that tells you that the violence is being brought on purpose. And and they'll eventually get back to it, and then the media will reach out again and this and that. So I think the media, for the most part, quite honestly, I think they just view me as it's well known that I was sexually assaulted into the agency. That was my hazing, and I think they just see me as somebody who's trying to get revenge or something like that. And it's like, I've been doing this work for 10 years, so that's an awful lot of revenge. But I've given up. I can't make the media report what they need to report, and they're just going to keep on doing whatever they want to do. So I just keep doing my work. Maybe it'll get through.
And I think that's why these kinds of meetings are so important.
Yeah.
It's like we have to share the message if they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Alex. Sorry.
No worries at all. We got several more questions. I'm going to try to make sure we're taking them in order, both between the chat and raised hands. Shauna Leonard wants to know, is Border Patrol now operating outside of the border, or is that all ICE currently?
Well, they say that they've gone back down to the border, but my understanding is that some of them have gone back down to the border and not all of them have gone back down to the border. So what scares me is the way they're really quiet right now. And then we've heard a couple of times where they've said, we're going to be used for the elections coming up, and we're going to use ICE for voting and this and that. We'll have to see how it goes. But when they're quiet like this, that's when I kind of worry about things. Putting Homan in charge and sending Bovino back down here. Homan's more violent than Bovino is. So Bovino is just more of a content creator. And yeah, he's violent, but he's, I call him the Liberace of the Border Patrol because he's always trying to get on television and stuff like that. But yeah.
We have a question from Christina Early. She would like to know if you could speak to the current situation in terms of government shutdown and funding and how that's impacting DHS and Border Patrol.
It's not impacting DHS and Border Patrol per se. I just saw Paul Perez, who's the new president of the Border Patrol Union. He was talking on, I want to say PBS or NPR, and he was saying, oh, our agency is the only one who's getting hit by it. And then she said, wait a minute, I thought y'all had lots of money from the big, beautiful bill that Republicans passed. And then he was like, well, yeah, but our citizen employees who are in uniform, they're not getting paid. So the only effect for them is that their non-uniformed employees are maybe not getting paid, and maybe their mechanics and stuff for their cars are maybe not going to work. But the agents themselves are fine; they're still getting plenty of money. They're not going to see any kind of interruption in the armaments. They're not going to see any kind of stoppage in building their concentration camps or anything like that. They got plenty of money. They can run for 7 years, even if Congress never passed another appropriations bill. They can run for another 7 years, so they're fine.
Our next question is from Kimberlyn Correa. They'd like to know, do you think that expanding the use of E-Verify to all employers, regardless of size, would reduce the demand for undocumented workers and labor?
No, because there's always a way to hire for undocumented labor. E-Verify is just another way to control people's data and surveil people and know where they're working, and it's another way for somebody to make money. You can always, even in companies that use E-Verify, you can still get around that stuff. So it's a waste.
And we've got a raised hand from Catherine Hess. Catherine, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Hi, Jen. This is the second time I've heard you speak, and I want to thank you for your bravery in being a whistleblower. Much appreciated by everybody here on this Zoom and everybody who was at the Y. My question is directly related to Turning Point USA and Club America. I'm currently involved in fighting back against those two organizations. And for the people who are on this Zoom who are not aware of the fact, who are in Tucson. The first Club America, which is funded and controlled by Turning Point USA, has just opened up at Rincon High School. It's the first Club America in the Tucson Unified School District. So that's the political work I'm involved with now, and I would like your opinion, if you have one, on good strategies to fight back against this multi-million-dollar hate group. And what you could, there's somebody else on this call working with me, and we are very interested in all strategies. We're in touch with people in a national organization fighting them, but I respect everything, and your opinion would mean a lot to both of us, I know, on this call.
Yeah, I've been talking with Tucson residents, other friends of mine that live over there, trying to figure out how to get the Border Patrol out of their schools as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's another thing that we all need to be working on locally, is getting Border Patrol out of, because they're in our elementary schools all the way to college. We need to get them out of our schools. And then Turning Point USA is, in my understanding, in high schools and colleges. And I know, like, the Border Patrol Union had ties to Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk spoke at a lot of the churches down here called Awaken, which a lot of Border Patrol agents go to. That's where they tell them that they're all godly warriors and all this other stuff. And their point, what Charlie Kirk's point, and what he taught them and the agents, and what the agents then turn around and teach children, and what all these people are teaching our children, is that these agents are the heroes, and that we have to get the quote unquote illegal aliens out. And then after that, we're going to go after the legal ones, because we need this to be a Christian nation. And so what we see are these groups taking over our schools and indoctrinating our children, which is interesting, is the way they accuse, like LGBTQ and so forth, of indoctrinating their children. That is exactly what these organizations are doing. Do you know, is Turning Point USA and Club America, are these outside club activities? Is that how they're organizing it within schools?
No, Club America at Rincon High School is being controlled by Turning Point. They have a member of Turning Point at the club, and the Equal Access Act, or law, whatever it's called, gives them the right to be a hate group at school. It's not a First Amendment issue. It's an equal access law issue, which forbids outside control of that group. So that's number one, a violation. And there's a violation on the school board as well, which tries to follow the equal access law. And we don't believe that it's in their governing board policy. We believe they have violated that. So our work is to get Club America out of Rincon High School. That's part of our fight, and also because of their support for ICE and CBP. They are the mouthpiece at that school now, supporting all this horror that is going on with CBP and ICE.
One of the things I suggest, there's two attorneys that I talk with a lot. Mo Goldman is the big one over there in Tucson. Mo, everybody knows Mo.
Yes, we know Mo. Yeah.
And Mo, I was talking with Mo and Luis about it, and I said it would seem to me like you need a different kind of club that's opposite than what the goal of the Border Patrol and all of these other ones is. And I think that is one where you celebrate immigrants, or you talk about why it is that people, have to file asylum or have to come to our country and things like this. So bringing in immigration attorneys who explain what is going on and this and that, and why people would ever come here, and the ways that so you have to provide an alternative. This is one of the reasons why these clubs exist, and the agency has gained so much power is because there's just not any other alternative out there. Nobody's giving. And that's one of the things I say that the Democrats have failed on is they should have taken the 4 years of the Biden administration to teach Americans why the asylum system is essential to national security, why having immigrants come into our country is essential to our national security. It makes us stronger than any other nation. That's why we're like that. And so I think we need to think of clubs and think of ways to teach those types of values to our children in these clubs and provide alternatives for them to go to instead of just you have the Border Patrol or you have ROTC or you have Turning Point USA kind of thing. So then we have like, maybe that would be, I don't know what they would call it, Peace Club or something like that, or Immigrant Club, or
Civics Club.
Yeah, I mean, let's get back to what we had.
Yes,
when we were
there are
growing up,
people,
right?
many people, yeah, there's many people advocating for that
Yeah.
as an alternative to these groups. But as you know, with the budget that TPUSA
Oh, for
has,
sure.
they're able to fund these, and we don't want them in Tucson. And the first one is here as of January 22nd at a high school in
Yeah.
TUSD.
Yeah. And they're going to have more money, but I think people are screaming and really searching for places to belong, in places that have hope and give them strength and show them that how we can be stronger together, and that what these other groups are encouraging and promising people is more brutality and more hatred, and spending more money on putting people in custody in closed conditions and separating families. If that's what you want, hey, go have at it. But that's not what we want. And providing an alternative. So.
All right, so we've got our final 5 or 6 questions that are in the queue, but a few people in the chat did want it brought up that Mo Goldman's actually on the call right now.
Oh no.
Hello, I'm here. I've been listening.
Hey, Mo.
Hey, 2 things. I just filed a habeas while we were doing this. I was listening in, but I filed a habeas and I did not know who to name as Secretary of U.S. Department of Homeland Security. So I named it outgoing Secretary Kristi Noem because we don't really have one right now. The other thing is, did you see that that Madison Sheehan, who was working under Kristi Noem, accidentally ordered 2,500 vehicles that had the ICE logo on it?
Yeah, sitting in parking lots now because nobody wants to
They
drive
can't
them because
use
they
them
say
because
ICE
ICE
on the
agents don't
side.
want to use it.
Because it's identified as an ICE vehicle.
Big mistake there.
Yeah,
Gotta
well,
keep them
what do they
white.
care? It's not their money, right?
White or
Our tax
black.
dollars at rest. Yeah.
Anyways, I will let you go back to your good job.
Thanks.
Our next question comes to us from Elena Mora. She wants to know, Jen, what do you think of the building of so many detention centers across the country? And what do you think are the next groups that could be held in these concentration camps?
So if there were enough violent criminal migrants in this country to fill those camps, they would be busy arresting nothing but violent criminal migrants, and they're not, because there's just not as many as they keep claiming there are. That's why they keep arresting people with no criminal backgrounds and not even immigration record backgrounds. So I've been looking at the schematics and everything. These places are being designed to kill. They are going to kill through neglect. There's not going to be enough medical personnel to meet their needs. They are going to kill people faster than they are killing them now. We will not know about all of them. Some of them are going to be children. There's going to be a lot of sexual assaults. They're going to have the judges, from what I could see, the judges are going to be right there in the facility with them so that they can then just move them in and out, like they said, an Amazon processing center. It's going to overwhelm the towns, and it's going to cost them a lot of money. Their infrastructure is going to suffer. Their electric grids and their water and their sewage is not going to be able to keep up. Then their hospitals are going to become overwhelmed. As you all know, as a border county, what happens when immigration comes to town and does all their tricks and their deeds. You guys know all of this. And so that's what these people are going to end up encountering as residents there. And then eventually, I think that they'll start with, I think Trump's probably going to start with the people that investigated him and tried to impeach him. I think these Democrats or Democratic leaders, if they think that they're not going to be targeted, they better think again. I think at least one of these camps will eventually be used as a political camp. Maybe even people like me. I don't know if they'll get down to people like me or not. My voice isn't as big as some people's. And I think, certainly they'll start with in the LGBTQ neighborhood, they'll start with the T's, the transgender kids, and then they'll probably go to the gay men. Lesbians are always kind of the last in that end up in that. So they're going to put everybody in there that they don't like. That's what they're going to end up doing. And so it's going to be used for American citizens as well. And I don't know. We need to stop it. And I don't know how to stop it without doing something that would get me arrested, quite honestly. So it's really, really bad.
I'm gonna go ahead and have to bring this home and set up a follow-up maybe, unless
we got just a handful left from where I cut them off. We do have another 3 questions here. From Mike Lipman. Jenn, have you found any current politicians who you think are willing to fight for some of the changes that you described tonight?
AOC, Joaquin Castro. There are a couple of others. I see that there's a Democrat out of New Mexico, Gabe Vasquez. He has a new Democratic reform thing for ICE and CBP and Border Patrol that he's pushing, but he's asking for more money for them. So there's not a lot of them. I mean, my big ask for everybody, and as far as the primary candidates and so forth, is to try and get people who will stand up against the Border Patrol and all of them. That's where we need to be going. If they're saying they need more money for these agencies, then they're completely on the wrong track with this. I mean, there are some other ones, but not too many, not too many at all. It's usually the progressives, to be honest with you.
Our next question comes from Jeannie Buell, who just wants to know if we can get you connected with her so she can invite you to be a guest speaker at an upcoming event for an organization she's involved with.
Sure.
Perfect. We will facilitate that connection. Our next question after that is from Carmen Vega. She wants to know if you have received threats because you were speaking up and how you maintain your safety.
I have received an actual rape threat from Rodney Scott. Flat out. When he was fired by Biden, when he was the chief of the Border Patrol, as soon as he was fired, he got on Twitter and said, it was before Elon bought it, and he told me I need to sit back, relax, and enjoy it, and just shut my mouth. So I took him to court here, and he admitted he had CBP tailing me and investigating me and all this other stuff. And of course, nothing happened to him, and now he's the head of CBP OPR. So as you can imagine, that's kind of scary for me. And he's, like I said, in charge of these cover-up teams again. I get the worst from the chiefs. The chiefs have made a lot of threats against me over the years. and some death threats and stuff. But most of the agents, honestly, as far as the agents in the field, they don't know who I am. They're too busy out there working and watching Fox News and stuff. They don't know who I am. So, yeah.
Our final question is from Cheryl and myself. You mentioned a short film earlier, and we were wondering where people could find that if they wanted to follow up and watch it.
Oh, the one that Chief Bovino did, Isaiah 6:8. I actually have it on Substack. There is, I'll send it to you all. I wrote an article on it talking about why this is important. The religious aspect is a very important aspect as well to look at. And the film is in there. Or you could also go to Chief Bovino's Instagram account or his Facebook account or his Twitter account, and you can find it there.
We'd rather boost your Substack, Jen.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, so I'll send it through email, and then Cheryl can send it out to everybody and stuff. So yeah. He does a lot of those videos. He spends our taxpayer money on that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Alex, Cheryl, we clear?
That ends our Q&A portion. Do we have any final thoughts from you, Eric, or from Cheryl?
Well, here I'll let go ahead, Cheryl. It's you kind of your thing, and I'll let you talk us out. Jen, we'll be talking again, friend. Allies for sure. Thanks again for being here, Ms. Cage.
Thanks.
All yours.
Thank you, Eric.
I just this was even better than I thought it was going to be. I'm so pleased that you were able to do this, and I would love to set up more talks for you to Democratic groups, because I think this is really important information. So I just can't thank you enough. And as Alex was saying, this has been recorded.
Okay.
I don't know when it will be available, Alex, or
If I get really lucky, within 48 hours. But
oh, okay.
how
Great.
often do I get lucky? So maybe the end of the week.
Okay, perfect. Again, Jen, thank you so much. Please let us know when you're coming out to Tucson again. I just wanted to tell you that nobody left the meeting. I've been watching the participants, and everybody's still here. So great job.
Cool.
Great job. Cool. Thank you all so very, very much. And we'll talk again soon.
Thank you. I'll tell everybody you know about what's really going on and the truth. It all makes sense now, doesn't it?
It does. And don't forget this great book. Read the book. Read the book.
100%.
Yes, it's a great book. It's a great book.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Everybody vote.